The kiss of Venus. That's what it's about today, which is essentially this very, very special pattern that our nearest neighbor, the planet Venus, draws out around Earth. Every 8 years, we get this perfect geometry, this five-fold shape drawn out just for us around our planet. And that's what we're going to talk about today, Scott. Hey?
Yeah, and it's really the relationship between Venus and Earth that generates this pattern. And
Yeah,
it wouldn't be possible if you were just looking at Venus from outside the solar system. You have to be on Earth to see this pattern, you know.
that's right. That's
Yeah.
right.
I first became aware of this through John Martineau's Little Book of Coincidence, where he
Mm-hmm.
showed this wonderful pattern. And it's got this five-fold symmetry, and how does that work in terms of time, Geoff? How many years does it?
So it's basically every 8 years on planet Earth, Venus draws out a five-pointed star around us, which happens to be 13 years on Venus, would you believe?
And aren't those
And so,
Fibonacci numbers?
yeah, you have a five-pointed star in space, 8 years, 8 years on planet Earth, 13 years on planet Venus, so 5, 8, 13, which is great. Um, but let's jump in, Scott, because like I'd like to maybe frame this video about Venus in two ways, right? One is looking at it as if you have Earth in the center. If you're to take an aerial view of planet Earth in the center, and you were mapping, the Earth was stationary, and you're mapping out the movement of Venus around Earth, it does this very special kind of like it goes outward far, far, far away from us, I think for 292 days. And then it comes all the way back and kisses us at the closest point every 584 days is what it is. And so she continues to go back out on her arc very, very far, far away, and then comes all the way back in and kisses us at her nearest approach.
And that's the
And
perspective that we get when we're just standing on the surface of the Earth, tracking
that's
the
right.
heavens and recording where Venus is,
That's right.
And it
Yeah.
comes from, like, the term planet means wanderer, and this is because these so-called wandering stars move around like separately from the rest of the fixed stars, and because they're planets, and sometimes
Yeah,
they go backwards,
I
and that
know.
that was really confusing to people a long time ago, like, what's happening here? But
Yeah.
if you need to have this, you have to track it for 8 years to see this pattern.
And who would have thought that, like, all geometric archetypes are beautiful, obviously, but who would have thought that our nearest neighbor actually like is beaming this geometric archetype, this pentagonal shape, the five-pointed star at us? That's all she does. It's an eternal motion. It's never ending pentagonal geometry being drawn around
It kind
us.
of gets into
It,
the archetype of Venus being the goddess of beauty, and,
yeah.
and how it seems very entirely appropriate that this planet is tracing out this beautiful, like, floral pattern in a way in regards to
It's
Earth.
so beautiful.
And also
It's
you can see this pattern if you analyze the situation from just the orbital patterns of Earth and Venus, not from the perspective of Earth, but from the perspective of the sun.
Yeah, exactly. So
So
you have
I
like the
made this little
geocentric view.
simulation about this.
Yeah, yeah, the geocentric view, and then the heliocentric view is like the sun in the center.
Mhm.
And it's a totally different way of looking at it, yet it ends up with exactly the same geometry.
Yeah,
I
and
mean, this is where it
I
gets
put this
so
code, this
cool.
very simple code that has the periods of the planets, into this program called Mathematica, which is a kind of graphing program. And I ran the simulation, and it made
So
this
cool.
incredible pattern, which I'll show in the video here. Um,
Yeah. Oh, I love this,
and it
Scott.
just kind of unfolds over time, and this is a dynamic pattern. It's kind of shifting over time, but it just kind of emphasizes this beautiful pattern. So
Mhm.
I'm blown away by it. I kind of think this is almost like a total eclipse of the sun. When the moon disk perfectly covers the sun, they're this exact same size, which seems
Mhm.
improbable, but there it is. And here we
Mhm.
have the same kind of thing with Venus and Earth tracing out this beautiful pattern that doesn't necessarily have to happen that way at all, and
Yeah.
yet it does. And so this
Mm.
gets me wondering about the nature of reality, and why the numbers are so perfect, and that's a whole other thing, a rabbit hole you can go down.
Well, do you know what's really cool, Scott, is, you can see this beautiful five-pointed star clearly, being drawn in space. And I was just thinking recently, if you add up the actual time it takes for Venus to kind of be at her closest approach to Earth, okay, then she goes all the way back out. And the time it takes her to come all the way back into her next closest approach. So this is how she draws out that five-pointed star. It's very close to the golden ratio. It's exactly 1.6 years, very close to the golden ratio in time. So then I kind of look at it that she is literally drawing out the five-pointed star, not just in space, but also in time. I mean, approximately. I know it's not 1.618, but like 1.6 is enough for me.
Well, and we mentioned the numbers, they're all 5, 8, 13. They're all Fibonacci numbers. Fibonacci is intimately related with the golden ratio. The
Yeah.
five-pointed star is almost like the emblem of the golden ratio because it has golden ratios all over it. And
Yeah.
so
Yeah.
really it's this golden relationship that we have with Venus. And
And you know
what's
what's
really
cool?
amazing is I analyzed the area of the planet Venus,
Oh, I
in
love this
miles,
one.
and then
Yeah.
I squared the circle and I measured the edge length of the square, and I'll show this
Can't believe
diagram.
that.
The edge length
Yeah.
of the square is 6,666 miles. Just
I know.
blows my mind. Like this is
That's a
so
true
perfect
Scott
too.
original, that one.
Yeah.
I only heard of that one today. I'm blown away, Scott. You can't be keeping these findings secret from us, That's a cracker. I couldn't believe it. Yeah, the rep digits, they just follow you around, don't they?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't really understand it myself how I'm able to find these things, but
Yeah,
I
it's super
somehow have this
cool.
ability, and I'm blown away by it just as much as you are. It's like,
Well, I got to enjoy a weekend away where I did this amazing workshop with a guy called Daniel Docherty. I'd love to credit him in the sacred art of geometry in the UK. And I did a whole weekend drawing out this shape of Venus. And it was actually when Venus was at her furthest away, most distant, like conjunction behind the sun. She was in it was a few weeks ago. And over the weekend of like drawing out the geometry and drawing out the exact pattern that she draws around us, it was uncanny to feel how I felt close to this celestial body in the sky, like literally, like I always go on about how geometry, brings us into these fields of resonance where like attracts like. But like it really happened, I was driving around that night in the UK and I was just thinking of Venus and feeling Venus. And I really recommend drawing geometry, because it then brings you into these patterns of order that are all around us. This is what I say all the time. And the Venus pattern is such a great example of that,
it's really just a question of kind of getting in tune with these things because they are all around us. But when you can harmonize with them, that's when you feel it, and
Yeah,
it becomes meaningful to you.
it really does. Yeah.
So if you like this, what our discussions, please like and subscribe and comment on the
Yeah,
video. We'd love to hear from you.
you bet. Thanks, guys.